Hello everyone! I got a bunch of fabric and I gave myself a whole month before Arctic Comic Con to make a Narinder cosplay, so of course I procrastinated through most of that. I will spare you the procrastination and just get right into it. I first laid out my fabric and started measuring out for the first tier of this cloak. It has 3 tiers that I'm going to make individually. Now the first tier I do make a full circle because I actually had the room on the fabric to do that, but for the rest of them I'm going to use a different pattern, which I will show you. And no, I did not end up cutting my hair, but at the time I was really scared that I was going to. After cutting it out, I opened it up to see how it would fit. But right before trying it on, I had to cut this little notch into it. All 3 layers of the cloak have this, so just assume that I do this for the other 2. Once I got it on, I discovered that the neck was way too big, so I folded it back in the back and sewed it up and just cut off the excess. Once I was happy with the neck size, I traced that out and then traced the rest of the pattern for the cloak. It has to have a front piece and then a back piece and 2 front pieces. Sorry. So I cut that out on the fold. And as always, I did not end up cutting up my carpet, even though my mom is always afraid that that's what I'm going to do. I got the front piece right here, and then just slapped the back piece on top of it. In all seriousness, I folded it up on the sides, and make sure it's only the sides if you're copying this or else it'll be wrong. And the shoulders I found out actually stuck out way too far for me, so I had to adjust that by just making the shoulders smaller on the inside, sewing it up and cutting off the excess. Then I took this cloak, once I was happy with it, and traced it onto the fabric again, just adding more length to the bottom. I thought I calculated enough fabric, turns out I did not, and then this was all I had. I did save that for later though, and this new fabric I got turns out isn't the same color, but at this point I didn't have enough time, so I just went with it. I laid down some parchment paper and started painting on all the red details. I used a sponge brush for this. Here it's just a sponge, but I did switch to a brush. It works pretty well, honestly. Once it's all on there, I do have to wait overnight for it to dry, so this part did take quite a while, and only fueled the procrastination more. Luckily for the sides of it, I didn't have to be too neat, so I could just throw down a border and then start painting. And also, if you're wondering why I'm not just putting paint down on the entire thing, then spreading it all out, it's because it might end up being more than I need, and I didn't want the paint to be like chunky in spots and then just light in other spots, so I went a little section at a time. I painted all 3 pieces of the cloak and then just cleaned up my desk and stuck the layers together. Also, if you're wondering why the first layer of the cloak is closed while the other 2 are open, it's because of this line, or these 2 lines down the front, that indicate that it might open. Before I put the top layer of the cloak on there, I first tried on the first 2 layers and measured out where my shoulder was, and then afterwards just used a shirt to measure out where the armholes would go. Also, I'd recommend cutting them bigger because that did end up needing to happen. And for cutting it out, I did not film it, so I just mimed it, or, demonstrated it on this little piece of fabric. And the reason I actually forgot about this was because this was a few days before the convention and I was just in rush mode the whole time. But I got those cut out, as you can see. Then it was time to attach the top layer. I originally did it right sides together like so, but it ended up slightly inverted. So I had to seam rip it all out, which I hated, and instead put it all on the inside like so. I don't really know how to describe it, I'm sorry, but when I turned it inside out or right side out, it ended up good. For the hood piece, I just used this cloak. I would not fit in the whole frame, that's how giant the hood is. So I wanted to be big enough to get over the crown and also the ears. For this, I put the top of the hood on the fold and just sewed up the back piece. And if you're copying this, do not sew up the bottom or the front piece. It will be closed and you won't be able to wear the hood. Then I just attach it onto the neck with right sides together like so. Once I got the hood on, I took my ruler and started measuring on the ends for these black dangly bits that are on the front of Narinder's cloak. And if you're wondering why I didn't do the same thing for the face covering, I don't know the technical term, I'm sorry. It's because I found these glasses and that would just obscure my vision like a ton, and it would just be annoying over the glasses. So I started measuring and cutting little pieces of embroidery thread. Yes, this took a while. Then I just hot glued them all on. At the time, I thought I was going to sew them on, but honestly, it was like a couple days, like 2 days before the convention, and I honestly just could not be bothered to do so. I probably put a lot more hot glue on than needed, but since it was going to need to be durable enough to survive a convention, I just put a ton of hot glue on for each strand. Surprisingly, did not take as long as I thought it would, and all 3 layers were done. Now I just needed the shackles. I got these and some handcuffs at a party store. I got some handcuffs because the shackles on their own would not fit my wrist, but the handcuffs would, so I just need to swap them out. And luckily, all the little chain links have little gaps in them, so I could just pull them off of the shackles. And then I just went about in the middle and split it off. Of course, they are uneven to make it tiny more realistic. Then I cut off the chains on the handcuffs and realized I didn't want to waste the shackles, so found out that they would fit around my ankles. No one noticed them, but I still liked them. To make this secure, I used a bit of wire around the loop in the handcuffs, and then just cut it down and lengthened a hole in the cuffs, or chain links, and then just hot glued the wire in, and added a ton more hot glue. I did shake it around a lot, like a lot more than what I'm showing on camera, just to check that it was in fact durable enough for a convention, and it did survive. Then I took them outside, tested the spray paint I was using, and sprayed it all with a metallic black. And now I just have a can of metallic black spray paint that I don't know what to do with, but I'm sure I'll find something. Now repeat this process like 3 more times, and it's good to go for the convention. And they actually look really good, if I do say so myself. And for a detail I almost forgot, the crown. I used one of these little party store crowns and just cut off the top. And for those of you who are about to mention that I already made a crown in a short, I thought that crown was way too big. And it was. It was too big for the ears on my head, so I just made this new one. I used basically the same methods, just making it out of foam. I got the middle marked out, the tops, sides, and where the edge of the crown goes, and then just drew on where I needed to cut, and folded it in half. I actually do kind of regret having to scramble to do this because it kept falling off my head, and in the end I just shoved it in my bag, and did not end up wearing it. I'm not going to go too into depth about explaining the whole process. I do, again, have a whole short on it if you want to go watch that. If not, that's totally fine. Once I've put the finishing touch on the crown, I was ready to go to the convention. I did get these pictures after I got back, so I'm sorry there's not many. I was just really tired. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See ya!